Hello, children. Let us discuss now the topic the modern age in Europe, that is Renaissance. Before starting the lesson, let us know that modern age. Okay, children, the age of a place can be divided into ancient, medieval, and modern. Okay, so we have discussed about ancient and medieval history of which country. We have been discussing in all these previous chapters about ancient and medieval history of India. Okay, so the first chapter begins with Harappan civilization. Then after Harappan civilization we discuss about Vedic age, then Buddhism and Jainism, Mauryan Empire, Gupta Empire, Chola Empire. In all these chapters, we have been going through the ancient Indian history. Yes. So after that, we discussed about Delhi Sultanate and then Mughal Empire. So we had gone through number of rulers under Delhi Sultanate and Mughal Empire. So we have been discussing all about medieval period of India. Then what about modern period of India? Children, modern period of India, you will be studying in class 10. You will be studying in class 10 all about modern Indian history. So let us stop discussing the Indian history now. Now we are giving a break to the Indian history, and now we are going to discuss something about world history. We are going to discuss about world history. World history, when we discuss about world history, we have to mainly focus on Europe. Okay, why we should focus on Europe, children? Because all the important events in the world at the beginning have taken place from Europe. Why all the new changes and developments have taken place from Europe? It is the British people first time came to India, and then India and Asia and Africa and many other part of the world. It is the European people first time they brought changes all over the world. So what are the changes? So that in order to know about the world history, first of all we have to start studying from the continent Europe. So let us go to Europe and let us discuss that which are the events took place and which brought about changes all over the world. Children, India became the colony of Britain. How? Because the British people came to India for trade, and slowly they took the political control of India. Then what situation led to the arrival of Britishers in India? So this Britain is in Europe, isn't it? So the changes followed by the changes taken place in Europe, they reached in India. Then we should know what are the changes took place in Europe. That is what we are going to discuss in the chapter modern age in Europe. Okay, so modern age in Europe, and mainly the topic we have to study is that Renaissance. The main topic is that Renaissance. This is the topic that we have to study, Renaissance. So in the modern period in Europe, the major change which took place is that Renaissance. Then we have to study what is this Renaissance. Children, you know that the term Renaissance is a Latin word. Okay, so what is the meaning of the term of this Latin word Renaissance? Is that rebirth, revival, or rebirth is that meaning of the term Renaissance. You can see here the literary meaning of the term Renaissance is revival or rebirth. Then what is this revival or rebirth? It is a kind of thought process, we can say that a kind of awakening or consciousness emerged among the mind of the people. Okay, the revolution which took place among the intellectual in their thought process can be called as Renaissance. Okay, it happened at the end of the medieval period in Europe. So in which century the Renaissance took place? The transitional movement, we can say kind of transitional movement which took place in Europe in all the realms, otherwise in every field of life of Europe from 14th century to 17th century can be called as a Renaissance. Okay, so children, why? What is the reason for this change took place in Europe is that you should know the background of Europe. Europe was actually under the control of the church. Church had the control of Europe. You should know the society, social control, social status of the Europe. You see, the medieval period of Europe, it was fully under the control of the Christian church, authority called church. So, church was the center of politics, economics, and social activities. Now, just like our government, church also means church played an important role in the life of European people. Okay, so you know, church never gave any kind of freedom to the individual. Even their thinking, even what they have to think and how they have to act, then what kind of practices and customs and culture they need to follow in one's life. Everything was controlled by the church, and even the church taught the people science, mathematics, different subjects, and people were never given any freedom to express their way of thinking, their viewpoints, their new ideas. So there was no chance of development. So once somebody stop you from expressing your own ideas, they dominate the whole society. That means, what is that? Only one person, few people think and they carry out everything, so that the majority is their ideas, they cannot come up with their new ideas, nothing. So there is no change. Now again, let us discuss the political system of medieval Europe. A kind of feudalism existed. You can see here feudal lord. You can see here king at the top, and at the top king was there. He was the owner of the whole land. Then he divided his land among the feudal lord. There were three category of higher lord, middle lord, and lesser lord. So he divided his land among the higher lord, middle lords, and lesser lord. So these lesser lord, they kept farmers, and they were treated, farmers were just like servants. No, they had to only produce in their field. They had to give all the profit to their lords. So the profits were taken by the lesser lord transferred to middle lords, then middle lords transferred their profit from higher lords, and finally reached to the king. So this kind of system, you see, no, it was based on the system was based on the land, no. So land was the basis of this, because king was owner of the whole land, so he divided the land and given to the lords. So the political system which existed in medieval Europe based on the land is called feudalism. Okay, this is so feudalism means it was a kind of political system. The kind of political system existed in medieval Europe can be called as feudalism. So in this system there is no chance of change, there is no development, nothing, only a kind of stagnation. Because of all these reasons only we call the medieval period as the dark age. Now what are the feature of dark age? Europe was politically fragmented among the feudal lords. So completely they were crushed among the feudal lords, so that there was no social change took place. So you understood what is Renaissance. So Renaissance is a transitional movement which took place in Europe. And what kind of transitional movement? They took place a revival or rebirth among the mind of people in their way of thinking. Then how revival and rebirth? Because now slowly people understood that means we are simply blindly following the church, and it is the time that we have to come out of the boundaries of the church, and then only we can make changes in our life. For that reason they brought about the revival of ancient Greek and Roman classic. Ancient Greek, the literature, every period there produces new literature. So Greek and so medieval period, the literature was there, that was fully controlled by the church. Literature, it always it shows the new ideas of the thinkers and ideas of the society, problems of everything. So that brings that make people to think. The similar way here, medieval period, there was a dark age, there was no literature, nothing. Even though if there was any writing, painting took place, only based on the theme of Bible and only dominated by the church with the guidance of the church. Now these people, they revived the Greek, they went back to past and said, yes, how beautiful our literature was, and that really shows the nature of the human being, their problems, their capacities, the beauty of nature, everything. So that means they give emphasis to the individuals and human being and problems of the society. So if you want to really live a meaningful life, we have to go back to ancient literature. That is the reason they revive the ancient Greek and Roman classic at the end of the medieval period. So all these changes, so they took place, freedom to think and act without being controlled by the external agency. People, they understood that we should not be that we are not the people to be controlled by the church. Our thinking, nobody can control our way of thinking and our ideas. Okay, so they started thinking freely. This change overall which took place in Europe can be called as Renaissance. Now you must have got an idea about Renaissance. Now let us start discussing the chapter. So before that, let's see what are the ignorance, blind faith and superstition was prevalent as learning and education became limited to the church. Okay, so only it is limited to the church. People were so ignorant, they were blind and there was no scientific learning took place during this period. Even Copernicus said that earth is not flat in shape, it is round in shape, but church taught the people earth is flat in shape, but the Copernicus was punished. So that kind of system of learning existed during this period. Now Catholic Church had assumed great authority and power. Okay, then the feudal fragmentation halted social and cultural progress in all areas. Feudal fragmentation, I told you, the political system which existed in Europe, king at the top and all the feudal lords. So they destroyed the social and cultural progress. There was no progress took place in the society. Europe was politically fragmented. Then medieval Europe between the 8th to 13th century has been referred as the dark age. So we can overall call medieval period as an dark age. Okay, then the next is what? The Renaissance, the transition from darkness of medieval time into enlightenment of modern age. So Renaissance, what were the feature of Renaissance is that they took place a transition from darkness of medieval time to enlightenment. It was characterized by spirit of inquiry, etc. Now let us focus on what are the topic we need to study. So we have to also study about causes of Renaissance, children. What are the causes of Renaissance that we will see from the lesson? The causes of Renaissance. Yes, this is the first chapter, first page of the chapter that we need to study. Let us only focus on the points what we have to study from the chapter. Since you understood the meaning of the term Renaissance, we have to only focus on the sentence and the paragraph that where we need to study about Renaissance. Okay, you see that it means rebirth. The meaning of the term Renaissance is that rebirth or revival for a complex transitional movement in Europe between medieval and modern times, beginning in the 14th century in Italy into a 17th century. So you have to learn these sentences under the Renaissance. Then children, this capture of Constantinople, children, this topic is there that you have to study this capture of Constantinople. You have to study. Constantinople was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire and was a center of Greek and Roman cultures. It had valuable manuscripts, and children, Constantinople, it was a capital of what is that? Roman Empire. Okay, the Roman Empire was divided into Eastern Roman Empire and Western Roman Empire. So Constantinople was the capital of Eastern Roman Empire. But when the Arabs destroyed the Constantinople collapsed. So that what happened is that that was the only way of trade route where all the European countries were using. Now, since the Constantinople collapsed, now Europeans, no, they had to find some other sea route. Now, otherwise, no, they couldn't carry out any kind of trade with other countries. So, their difficult task was to discover new sea route. So, that was the one reason. You see that due to the capture of Constantinople, two things happened. One thing is that when the Constantinople was captured, these Arabs, no, they were ignorant about education and value of the learning and all. So these Arabs, they destroyed all the learning center of Constantinople. So there were so many scholars. These scholars, in order to protect their knowledge and manuscript, they had all handwritten manuscripts in their hand about Greek and Roman classic. Greek and Roman classics, were very valuable, and these scholars, they were preserving with them in the form of manuscripts. And when these Arabs, they attacked Constantinople carrying all these valuable manuscripts, they ran away from Constantinople, and finally they reached in which place, Italy. They reached in the place called Italy. So after reaching in Italy, what happened is that they settled there. These scholars, they settled in Italy. From there, what happened, since they had all the teaching Greek and Roman classics with them, they started spreading the knowledge, these Greek and Roman classic, among the people of Italy. So we can say that the day when they started teaching the Greek and Roman classic, we can say that that was the beginning of the Renaissance. So the Renaissance began from Italy. We can say one reason was fall of Constantinople. How fall of Constantinople caused the Renaissance? Because they carried all the important documents, include manuscripts of Greek and Roman classics, and then they settled in Italy. So then from Italy they started. So one reason is that. The another reason is the capture of Constantinople led to Renaissance, because due to that the Europeans had to find new sea route. Okay, they had to find out new trade route. So many people started their expedition means they started their adventurous journey to discover new sea route. Okay, so one of the reason became the capture of Constantinople. Okay, so but Constantinople fell into the hands of Turks. Then Turks means Arabs. Okay, Arabs. In the year 1453, many Greek and Roman scholars were thus forced to shift to Rome and other parts of the Europe. Then Rome is in Italy. Okay, that's why I say Italy. Rome, the capital of Italy is Rome now, isn't it? Then became the center of the Greek culture. So Greek culture means these scholars, they started spreading Greek and Roman classic. Then these scholars were genius men and liberal outlook, humanism and logical thinking. Wherever they went, they spread their new spirit and ideas. So number of scholars who were there in Constantinople, they were forced to move, and these scholars, they spread their new ideas wherever they went. Especially they went and settled in Rome, that is in Italy. Okay, so in this way they revived the interest of the people in the study of Greek philosophy, science, art and literature. And the next point we continue is that decline of feudalism. Children, this topic is not there, you don't have to study. Even though I discussed about feudalism, you understood that king is there. This for your knowledge I am telling. Then feudal lords, higher lord, middle lords, lesser lord. So this system is called feudalism. Okay, the system also collapsed in Europe. So because of the system collapse, we are not going in detail about it. So the collapse of feudalism also became the cause of Renaissance. But in topic what we have to study, we only focus on that. Then new trade routes. Children, this topic is there, you have to study. Okay, you have to study Constantinople, fall of Constantinople, The new trade route, this also you have to study. Okay, the new trade routes. So what about new trade routes? I told you, due to the collapse of new trade, what is that, Constantinople, they had to find some other sea route. So many people, they started their journey to find the new sea route. Other than that, you see, no number of changes. You see, you must have heard about Magellan. Magellan wanted to prove that, he was a Spanish traveler, wanted to prove that Earth is round in shape. So Magellan started his journey from a particular place from Spain. Then Magellan and his followers, and finally he completed his journey. Magellan could not complete, isn't it? He died on the way, but his people, he completed the journey and reached to the place back where they started. So Magellan was one of the important traveler of this period. Then Christopher Columbus, you must have heard about Christopher Columbus. What is his importance? Christopher Columbus, he discovered America. He discovered America. Then later on only we understood that Amerigo Vespucci proved that the continent which was discovered by Christopher Columbus was not India but America. But Christopher Columbus thought that that was India. All that another story. Okay, anyway, we are discussing here about the important travelers of the period. One is Magellan, then Christopher Columbus, then Vasco da Gama. You remember Vasco da Gama reached in India, landed first time in Kapan. So then what the Bartholomew Dias was there, another important traveler. He reached only up to the tip of Africa. He traveled and he reached up to tip of Africa. Then after that, finding so difficulty, he went back. But followed by Bartholomew Dias route, then finally Vasco da Gama reached in India. So number of travelers, they started their journey from Europe to different parts of the world and discovered new sea route. Now what change this brought about is that people came into contact with other people, especially people in the eastern part of the world, so that they came across new ideas. They all got their mental horizon widened when they came across with the people of east. Okay, so let us go through the sentence. Yes, what is that? Yes, the navigation of Portugal and Spain played an important part in the geographical explorations and discovering new trade routes. Constantinople fell into the hands of the Turks. Then, so the trade routes between the west and the east were closed. As a result, the European traders and navigators felt the need for discovering the new sea routes. Hence, so Prince Henry, the navigator of Portugal, discovered sea route of to Africa. So Prince Henry was one navigator. Another important navigator was who? Bartholomew Dias was there. He was successfully reaching in Cape of Good Hope. What is this Cape of Good Hope? Africa. The tip point of Africa is called Cape of Good Hope, at the southernmost point of Africa. Then Columbus, he discovered America in the year 1492. Then in the year 1498, Vasco da Gama sailed as far as India. Then Ferdinand Magellan made a voyage around the world. Magellan's full name is Ferdinand Magellan, and reached a vast ocean which he called Pacific Ocean. Then, due to these discoveries, contact between the east and the west began to develop. There was a fusion of ideas. So all these things. Okay. So the opening of new trade routes not only encouraged trade but also created the spirit of adventure and broadened the mental horizon. So they came across, spirit of adventure improved, then mental horizon widened because they came across with the new people. Okay, so these are all about the trade route. Now children, these are the topic we don't have to study. Okay, we, according to the reduced syllabus, you are not studying these topic. Now we have to directly move on to the next topic. Is that, what is that? Invention of printing press. This is the important topic. You have to study invention of printing press. You will be studying about Gutenberg. Who invented this in printing machine? You know, the German scholar Gutenberg was the one who invented this printing machine. So that what changes it brought about among the people? You know, People actually never knew what is Bible. They were only following the teaching of the church. But after once because of the invention of the printing press, now number of copies could be made at a time. So now these copies, the books could be reached among the could be reached into the hand of the people in very cheap rate. Okay, now it could be accessed in cheap rate, so common people started reading all kind of book, especially Bible. So they got enlightened, they understood the real idea, the real ideology of these books, and the reality, and what is we are practicing in our life, and actually what is the reality. So knowing all these things, people became awakened, they became enlightened, they became aware of the reality. So these things also, so invention of printing was a what is one of the remarkable change which brought about in Europe and led to the Renaissance. That became one of the important cause of Renaissance. So let us read this. Yes, the printing press was set up in Germany. Yes, in Gutenberg in the middle the 15th century. Then the invention of printing press in the middle of the 15th century in Europe made it possible to produce books in a large number. The Bible and many other religious and classical books were printed and made available over Europe. So the printing press, okay, we'll underline. So these all points are there, you need to study. So the printing press in yes spread knowledge far and wide. Scholars found it easier to read printed books than handwritten manuscripts. Okay, so they could easily read this is printed book in the Middle Age. So books were few and they were beyond the reach of the ordinary people. Earlier it was only few, but now printing press enabled Europe to multiply books and put them with the reach of the people. Printing and distribution of books influenced the people's attitude, life, brought about new awakening in Europe. So these are about children principles of Renaissance. When we study, we are not, you don't have to study this. Principles of Renaissance are not there in our reduced syllabus. Then these things are also not there. Then beginning of Renaissance is also not there, you don't have to study. Then impact of Renaissance is there, you have to study the impact of Renaissance. Children, under the impact of Renaissance you have to study about art, you need to study about art, painting. Okay, under the art when we discuss about children, what happened in the field of art, especially you see earlier, you see kind of rough drawings were only made. Now they started adopting science in the field of art. Okay, that means they started studying anatomy, the human figure scientifically, and they started doing proper measurement and all. Accordingly they made a lifelike picture during this period. Earlier the church restricted many things, they even restricted the usage of certain color, even what kind of illustration, that means what kind of picture you need to make. Only the events from the religious books were allowed, but now that is not the condition, it totally changed. They came out with the free idea. So Renaissance did not merely lead to the rebirth of learning, but during this time the painting and sculpture served as a tool for propagating the religion. Okay, so now sculpture means what? Image making, not only painting, image making. Okay, then however the artists of the Renaissance period refused to abide by the medieval rulers. Okay, the artists of the Renaissance period, they objected the teaching of the church. They did not follow any rules of the church, they came out with a free idea. So that accordingly their method was frescoes of wall paintings are called fresco. They came out with wall painting. Then oil colors they started using, wooden cuts they started using for their painting. Then they studied the optics means measurement, distance. Then they also used geometry, and then they developed the perspectives. Then they also studied human anatomy. So they brought about a new revolution in the field of art. Okay, then what, let's see about painting, what changes they brought about in the field of painting. When we discuss, you see, Renaissance painters, they established a very high standard painting. Then they were able to show their talent without being restricted. So Leonardo da Vinci was one of the famous painter of this period, and you have to only remember which are his important painting: Last Supper and Mona Lisa. Okay, these two paintings were so important of Leonardo da Vinci. This much only you have to study under Leonardo da Vinci. He was a famous painter. Remember, Last Supper and Mona Lisa were the important painting. Then you have to remember that creating thousands of uh, page neatly drawn. What is that? Yes. So that one you can leave. You can read one of his paintings of the Virgin of Rocks and Last Supper and Mona Lisa are the great painting. Then okay, now let us move to the next. Michelangelo and all is not there, but he is also an important painter and sculptor. Sculptor means sculpture making. You see. Okay, Michelangelo sculpture, statue of Moses, which is made by Michelangelo. Then Raphael, he made painting inside this St. Peter's Church painting he made inside. Then Pieta is the statue. That is what Mother Mary carrying the Jesus Christ dead body. He was crucified, Jesus Christ was crucified. Why? Because these Europeans in the Europe, no, noblemen, rich people, they were all criticized by Jesus Christ. They didn't want to be criticized by Jesus Christ. So he was a pure man, Jesus Christ. He wanted people to live their sinful life. So he brought about all kind of wrongdoing. So these people never liked. So they crucified Jesus Christ. Finally, Jesus Christ's body after his death, it was brought down and kept on the lap of Mother Mary. That statue which is made, okay, by Michelangelo, is called what? Pieta. The most sorrowful woman in the world is Mary, Mother Mary. Okay, so this is called Pieta. Anyway, children, you don't have to study these things. These are all cut. Okay, sculpture and all cut. You don't have to study. Sculpture means images. Now you have to study the topic literature. Okay, literature you need to study. Under the literature you have to mainly study about uh, William Shakespeare. Okay, literature of England, you have to study literature in England. Literature of Italy you don't have to study. So it means, children, literature of Europe, in this Europe consists of number of countries. So out of that, England's literature is very important. Why? Because Shakespeare heralded from England. So you are studying, no, Merchant of Venice and all you are studying right now. It's in English. Okay, so that is a work of William Shakespeare. So you know nothing to explain about William Shakespeare. Wonderful work, and really shows the real nature of the society, and he played an important role. He was one of the important Renaissance writer of the period. So Renaissance, William Shakespeare, he was an English poet, playwright, and actor. And then what is he wrote 38 plays and 154 sonnets. Then what is it? Historical dramas. He also wrote like Richard II, Henry V, etc. Then Midsummer Night Dream, Much Ado About, As You. Then all these are of William Shakespeare's work. Okay, so Shakespeare works transcends culture and history. Okay, so he appeals to emotions and thoughts that are part of internal human nature and therefore have a universal appeal. So means all over the world people appreciate his work because he could bring the real emotions and thoughts, and the condition of the society could be really reflected in his work. Then the science, when we study about, you have to study science, you need to study Nicholas Copernicus, you have to study. Okay, he was a mathematician and astronomer. He was the one who was punished by the church, I told you in the beginning. Okay, so he brought about heliocentric theory, formulated that modern universe. According to him, he said what uh, sun is the center. Church thought that earth was the center, but he said no, sun is the center. So his theory is known as heliocentric theory. What is this heliocentric theory? In his heliocentric theory, sun is made up of helium, no? That is why his theory is named as heliocentric theory. So children, you have to study all these points. Okay, all these 4 points only you need to study, nothing else. Okay, there is no one center of all the celestial circles or of his. The center of the earth is not the center of the universe, that you know that. But the sun is the center of the universe, but only gravity. Then all the spheres revolve around the sun. The earth has more than one motion, but that is rotation and revolution. This much you have to study. Then about consequences, it is not there. Okay, you don't have to study the topic consequences. So children, we are winding up the topic renaissance. This much only you need to study, follow the lesson and study properly and score the marks. Okay, all the best.